Hello, youth. Super grateful to be here today. And today, when I was thinking about the sermon that I was going to speak and what I was going to talk about, I had a few sermons that I could have used, that I thought of using, and at some point I felt convicted because there's certain things that are going on in my life that have been testing my faith, and I thank God for it because that relationship with the Lord only gets tighter when you begin to rely on Him more and more. And earlier today when we were singing in that second song, the words, "I surrender" and "have your way in me," as I was singing and thinking about the sermon, I've looked at the lyrics and recognized the fact that as good as these lyrics sound when we sing them and when we say them, but they also require a lot of faith, because to surrender everything to the Lord and to be able to give the Lord to have His way within us takes a lot of faith. Having the understanding and knowing that the Lord has our back and He is going to provide and He's going to guide us. I was going through these videos on Instagram, and every once in a while I get these motivational reels that come up. And there was this dude talking in a deep voice, very like motivational and all, but he was speaking about rats and the study that was done in Harvard. And I thought it was really cool. I was like, man, interesting, because it was oddly something that really encouraged me in that moment. I was like, dang. But he was talking about rats that they took in Harvard. These scientists put them to the test, and they took a breed of wild rats and a breed of domestic rats. And they put them in these tiny pools where they couldn't see anything besides the water and the walls. And the domestic rats ended up trying to swim and staying afloat and surviving for, on average, of 40 to 60 hours. Whilst the wild rats, they only survived 15 minutes before drowning. And to me, that was very interesting. As I kept listening to that reel, he went on and he said that they took the same breed of the wild rats, and then they ended up letting them go to 14 minutes in that water right before they were about to give up, ended up taking them out, drying them out, giving them time to rest, and then putting them back in. And then those same wild rats that would drown in 15 minutes ended up lasting 40 to 60 just as the domestic. And I first started to think what the difference was between those rats, and it couldn't have been physical because both wild and the domestic ended up reaching the 40 to 60. So it had to be something psychological. And it was interesting because as I started just thinking to myself, I saw that the domestic rats, they had an owner. They had someone that was feeding them, providing for them, giving them water, giving them a place to stay, whilst the wild rats are just, all they have is themselves and the faith that they have in themselves. And as soon as those wild rats got a taste for what it's like to have someone to save them, pull them out of the water, to be there for them, it was like this hope, this faith was sparked up within them, and they were able to last just as long, which I thought was really cool. And the more that I started to look at this, the more I understood that a lot of times we, like those wild rats, for example, having the faith in just themselves and what they are capable and able to do, in that moment, those 15 minutes of struggling, trying to stay afloat, they came to this realization that they're just going to die, that they have no one there. If I can't do this, no one can do this for me. Whilst the domestics, they've had an owner, had somebody watching over them, taking care of them. They were able to put their faith into someone that they couldn't see. Because keep in mind, in this pool, they couldn't see anything but this water and walls. And so it got me thinking, because I have some friends that are still walking, having their own walk and how they're walking, and I do try and I do speak to them about the Lord, and there's progress, and I know the Lord is working on their hearts, but I noticed the way that when trials come in their lives and the reactions that I am able to contrast between even times where I'm losing faith, I can still keep myself with a couple verses from the Bible and understanding that the Lord is always going to guide my path. He's going to watch over His righteousness, righteous people. And so I noticed the difference between me and my friends, and the reactions would oftentimes be super anxious or angry or hating on someone else's fault, and it's just not a good mentality or mindset to be within those few days or week that they're going through something. And then I would notice that oftentimes, as much as I didn't understand or I don't know how these trials will move on or change, I understand that the Lord is with me, and I understand that the Lord is guiding this path, and that His protection is over me. And I wanted to read this, start with this verse from the Bible. It's in Jeremiah 32, and it's verse 27. And the verse says, "Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is anything too hard for me?" And by simply, when I was reading this verse, I was thinking like, man, the rat that has been saved once, or the rat that has been domesticated, they know that this person, this being, whoever it is that cares for them or may save them, that what I'm going through, it isn't impossible for them to come and swoop me up and save me. And I was just thinking at this perspective, like this rat is looking at a human, and to them, that's their savior. That's the person that can like save them in this situation, whereas we have God to look up to. And when there's literally nothing impossible for God, when not only is there nothing impossible for God, but He knows what we're going through, what we're feeling, what we're experiencing in that moment. And it's not even a fair perspective or a fair contrast, you know? And this rat was able to survive for 40 to 60 hours in hope, with this little bit of hope that there's this human that can save them. When a lot of times we may be going through something, and it could last weeks, could last months, it could be a few days, whatever it may be, and sometimes we have this discouragement and this feeling where we might lose some hope. And I would just like to encourage you guys, and myself included, that we have a loving Father that is there for us, that is there to protect us, watching our walk and guiding our walk in ways that He sees fit. And I would just like to encourage all of us to have that faith in the Lord. I would like to leave off with this one last verse. It's in James 1, 2-4. And James 1, one of my favorite chapters, these two verses have came through for me so many times. It's James 1, 2-4. "Count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfast, and let steadfast have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." And that verse there, once again, solidified this kind of idea that I was throwing around and thinking, like, this reaction that my friends would have, or people that I know would have, versus me, or sometimes my parents may be going through something, or friends that I know, and this solid faith, this peace that they have over them, knowing that the Lord is watching over them. And I would just like to encourage each and every single one of us to rejoice in trials, to rejoice in moments where it may seem like whether there be no end, or you don't think that there would be a good ending to this problem or situation. I would just like to encourage us to have that faith in the Lord and understand that our Father loves us like children, and that our identity, we are children of God. Thank you. That would be it.